The preferred method of killing involves beheading with chainsaws. Other victims are dissolved in vats of acid.
Mexico City's chief of police was shot and injured early Friday in a dramatic assassination attempt that took the lives of 2 of his bodyguards.
You might think that death is the worst thing that can happen to a person, but for some people, death is a mercy. People who steal from cartels face unimaginable horrors that make death seem like a blessing. In this video, we'll explore the torturous life of those who dare to cross the most ruthless and brutal drug lords in the world. Martin Alejandro Cota Monroy. It was 5:30 a.m. on October 10, 2010, when the police responded to a call from a quiet apartment complex in Phoenix, Arizona. The officers expected to find a routine drug bust, but what they saw was beyond their worst nightmares. In the living room of one of the units, they found a headless body lying on the floor. The victim was identified as Martin Alejandro Cota Monroy, a 38-year-old Mexican national who had been living in the U.S. for several years. Further investigation revealed that he had stolen 400 pounds of illegal substances from a powerful cartel called PEI Estatales El Chapo. When the cartel learned about the foul play, Alejandro lied to them and said that the Border Patrol had seized the merchandise. However, they eventually found out the truth, and when they did, they planned to kidnap Alejandro and take him out in Nogales, Mexico. But when Alejandro learned about his imminent death, he tried to buy himself some time by promising to pay the cartel back with his house. But as it turned out, the house wasn't even his, and this got the cartel even more infuriated. As if that wasn't enough, Alejandro decided to flee Nogales to Phoenix, where he thought he would be safe, but that was the moment he put a nail in his coffin. The cartel wasn't going to let this slide that easily because, you see, this isn't even about the money or the value of what he stole from them. We're talking about a cartel that turns over hundreds of thousands of dollars daily from their various criminal enterprises. So you could tell there was more from where Alejandro stole from. But the reason what he did is unforgivable is because of the disrespect. And the cartel was determined to set an example with him so that others like him would think twice before they mess with them. So on that day in October 2010, they sent their most vicious lieutenants, who, by the way, were Alejandro's former friends, to Phoenix. He thought they had come for a friendly visit, so he welcomed them in and served them food and drinks in his apartment. The food and drinks were eventually his last. Too bad he had his last meal at the same table with his enemies. An eyewitness told the authorities that he had seen the suspects drinking with Alejandro around 4:30 a.m. on the apartment patio with several other males. 2 other witnesses who were present at the apartment also came forward to tell the officers that they had seen the hitman with Alejandro around the same time. The witnesses later went to bed that early morning, but by the time they woke up around 5:30 a.m., they found Alejandro's body on the living room floor and immediately called emergency services. But before the officers arrived, the witnesses said that the 3 men who had been drinking with Alejandro a few hours earlier had hurriedly left the apartment in a burgundy Ford SUV. Police investigation found that Alejandro had worked for his sister's husband, Arturo Beltran-Leyva, of the infamous Beltran-Leyva organization. He was a mid-level member in the organization, and so the cartel wanted to avenge his death by targeting the 3 hitmen who had killed him. Meanwhile, the police were able to track down and arrest one of the suspects, 36-year-old Cristanos Morayoki. On October 18, 2010, the grand jury of Maricopa County indicted Crisantos on 1 count of second-degree murder, a Class 1 dangerous felony, to which he agreed to plead no contest on March 4, 2013. According to the authorities, this was the first time a cartel-related ring that involves removing someone's head from their body was recorded in the United States. But juring like this is a regular part of the drug war in Mexico, as cartels fight over territory. Headless bodies have been dangled from bridges, severed heads have been sent to victims' family members and government officials, and bags of up to 12 heads have been dropped off in high-profile locations. However, the United States has also had a fair share of cartel-related violence, like in 2009 when 17 members of a Mexican cartel were indicted for the murders of 9 individuals in the San Diego area, including 2 victims whose bodies were disintegrated in acid. I know that might sound gruesome, but wait until you see what happened to the next person on this list. Ricardo Corral Moreno. On April 14, 2019, a motorcyclist found a lifeless body of a man lying in the middle of the westbound lane of South Liberal Way. Through his tattoo and fingerprints, the victim was later identified as 27-year-old Ricardo Moreno, a man from Olympia, Washington. As you might have already predicted, the motive behind this brutal murder was money. His case was a $90,000 debt he owed to a Mexican drug trafficking organization. However, owing a cartel money and not being able to pay is as good as stealing from them. Police investigation revealed that a group of the cartel's hitmen, led by one Marcos Alonso Castillo Bernal, had lured Ricardo to Portland under the pretext of a drug trade. They then abducted him and held him hostage for several days under severe, inhumane treatment until they eventually decided to take his life and dump his body in the middle of the road. 4 of the suspects fled the scene, but investigators were able to get a hold of Marcos Alonso Castillo Bernal. The litany of charges against him included conspiracy to possess with intent to distribute controlled substances, killing while engaged in illegal substance trafficking, kidnapping resulting in death, and fraud. When the case went to trial, Castillo Bernal confessed to being aware that Moreno was held against his will at a ranch. However, he denied in taking part of the kidnapping and murder, but he admitted to guarding and disposing of his body. He claimed he was only taking orders from his superiors, a claim his defense took to trial. His defense attorney told the court that Castillo Bernal was also a victim of the cartel's oppression and that he did not act out of his own will. But the jury didn't buy any of these pleas, as he was found guilty on all charges and slammed with a 26-year prison sentence. Although he was given the option of a reduced sentence if he cooperated with the authorities, he'd be shooting himself in the foot if he did that, because his family was still in Mexico, so he didn't need to be told what would happen to them if he didn't keep his mouth shut. Next, we have the teacher who left the classroom to rob a cartel. Barney Dale Harris. It's hard to imagine what went through the mind of Barney Dale Harris, a 40-year-old Spanish teacher and basketball coach at the Union Academy Charter School, when he decided to rob the Jalisco New Generation cartel. Perhaps he was motivated by greed or desperation, but whatever his reasons were, he made a fatal mistake that cost him his life and shocked his community. Now, for those of you who don't know, the CJNG is the second most violent and powerful criminal organization in Mexico. The CJNG is known for its aggressive use of extreme violence and its public relations campaigns. It has carried out several high-profile attacks against the Mexican government and citizens, such as the 2015 ambush that killed 15 police officers in Jalisco.
In Mexico, on Monday, 15 police officers were killed in an ambush by suspected gang members in the southwestern state of Jalisco. 5 others were wounded.
The 2020 assassination attempt on Mexico City's security chief.
Mexico City's chief of police was shot and injured early Friday in a dramatic assassination attempt that took the lives of 2 of his bodyguards.
The 2011 murder of 35 people in Veracruz that the group claimed were members of the rival Los Zetas cartel.
More violence in Mexico, but on a worrying scale. 35 bodies dumped underneath a bridge in eastern Mexico. Veracruz was a quiet port city. Now, dead men and women are dumped near shopping centers.
2 days after this attack, an additional 11 bodies of Zetas that the CJNG were suspected to have taken out were found around the city. These were the kind of people Harris and his brother-in-law, Stephen Alexander Stewart Jr., decided to mess with on April 8, 2021, when they broke into the home of a member of the CJNG cartel. According to Alamance County Sheriff Terry Johnson, Harris and Stewart had invaded a mobile home in search of money and drugs, but their looting was interrupted by a member of the notorious cartel, 18-year-old Alonso Beltran Lara. Things quickly took a tragic turn when he refused to cooperate by showing them where the money and illegal substances were hidden, so they tied him up and put 2 bullets in his head, execution style. Alerted by the gunfire, other cartel members who were close by immediately joined the party. A fierce gunfight ensued, leaving Harris dead in a bedroom and Stewart wounded while fleeing. The police arrived soon after, following multiple calls reporting gunfire, to find a really gruesome scene. While the rest of the cartel members fled the scene, Stewart was captured a few days later and was charged with armed robbery and first-degree murder. No one who has attempted or succeeded in stealing from a cartel has lived to tell the story. But what do you think would happen to a man who not only stole from a cartel, but bragged about it to the public? Eric Too Ramirez. One of the most useful and life-sustaining behaviors for any criminal is to keep their mouth shut, especially when they've stolen from a gang of criminals. But this generation of criminals now care more about attention than they care about their own lives. If that wasn't the case, then how could a person have the guts to steal from a Mexican cartel and then go ahead and brag about it over the phone?
The FBI is on the case of a missing Texas man they say bragged about stealing thousands of dollars from a Mexican cartel and then disappeared just 2 hours later.
On March 23, 2023, a 35-year-old Texas man, Eric Too Ramirez, attended a party in Laredo, Texas. He was drinking and having fun at the party with his friends, but moments later, he was heard on the phone with an unknown woman, bragging about how he had stolen $50,000 from Cartel del Noreste. If that name didn't send cold shivers down your spine, then let me educate you, because it will help you better understand the severity of Eric's crime. The Cartel del Noreste, or Cartel of the Northeast, CDN as they were known, is one of the most notorious criminal organizations in the world. Being a splinter faction of the infamous Los Zetas cartel, it's safe to say that they might have inherited their brutality and viciousness from the Zetas.
The preferred method of killing involves beating with chainsaws. Other victims are dissolved in vats of acid.
These guys have been involved in several gun battles that have left hundreds of people dead. But one of their most gruesome acts of violence was back in 2010 when they massacred 72 migrants in San Fernando, Tamaulipas. The victims were mostly from Central and South America who were trying to reach the US border in search of a better life. These were the guys Eric decided to mess with, and he paid for it dearly less than 24 hours after he bragged about stealing from them. On March 24, 2023, gang members of Cartel del Noreste crossed the border into the U.S. in a blue four-door Dodge Ram pickup truck. They bundled Eric into the truck and whisked him away to their headquarters in Nuevo Laredo, Mexico. A few hours after his abduction, his girlfriend and sister reported the kidnapping to the authorities. 3 days after their complaint, the United States immigration officers arrested an alleged member of the cartel, Jonathan Cabriales, at the same port of entry while driving the same pickup truck used for the kidnapping. Cabriales admitted that he was aware that Eric had stolen from the cartel and that he had taken part in his abduction. However, he didn't share any information that could help the authorities find Eric, because according to him, the last he saw of him was when they dumped him in the cartel's safe house in Nuevo Laredo. The other hitmen with him on that mission are still on the run, and as of the time of the making of this video, nothing has been heard of Eric or his whereabouts. The teens who were falsely accused. 2 teenagers from Minnesota had a brush with death when they crossed paths with the ruthless Sinaloa cartel, led by the most notorious drug lord in the history of organized crimes, El Chapo Guzman.
The long road that led Chapo Guzman from the mountains of Sinaloa to the courthouse behind us today was paved with death, drugs, and destruction.
The young duo had been accused of stealing a large stash of meth and $200,000 from a hidden location in St. Paul, unaware that they were messing with one of the most powerful drug syndicates in the world. The cartel was furious and sent 3 hitmen from LA to hunt them down. The hitmen were not ordinary thugs, but members of the notorious MS-13 gang hired by the cartel to do their dirty work. They tracked down the teens, abducted them, and took them to a house on Palace Avenue. There, they subjected them to merciless, inhuman treatment while demanding that they return the drugs or pay $300,000 as compensation. They also threatened to kill their families if they didn't cooperate. You can imagine the agony and despair those kids went through because they were unable to meet these impossible demands. But then, something unexpected happened. The kidnappers got information that the kids were actually innocent and that, in fact, the real thief was someone inside the cartel. This changed everything for the kids as the hitmen decided to let them go, but with a stern warning to keep their mouths shut. But as soon as they were set free and dropped off in South Minneapolis, the kids wasted no time in contacting the FBI, who had been investigating the cartel's activities in the Midwest. The FBI agents and local police quickly raided the house on Palace Avenue, where they arrested some members of the gang. The teens were lucky to have survived their ordeal, but they were scarred for life. They suffered physical and psychological trauma from the inhumane treatment. One of them almost lost a finger, and they both feared that their hands would be chopped off. This was a common practice among the Mexican cartels, who used it as a way of sending a message to anyone with the intention of messing with them. Who among these guys do you think got the most brutal treatment for trying to mess with a cartel? Please share your thoughts on this with us in the comments below. And if you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. Thanks for watching. Until next time, stay safe.